will stay in Division 2. Oh, he has missed it! Manchester City are up!
1999, a great year for football in Manchester. There were trophies, there was Wembley Stadium, and there's a dramatic late comeback in a final. Yes, you got it right, this is all about Joe Royle's Manchester City and the game that changed both their fortunes and, arguably, the entire history of football with it. Since we left you in 1983, City underwent a yo-yo cycle, bouncing between Divisions 1 and 2 with perfect synchronicity that went promotion or relegation, breathe for a season before back to the promotion or relegation. In this time, City chewed up and spat out managers like Billy McNeil and Jimmy Frizzell before Mel Matchin and Howard Kendall attempted the club's latest stabilisation. And it did look as though Kendall was about to dredge City out of their funk until Everton tugged on his heartstrings and lured him back to Merseyside. It was only when Peter Reid turned up that Main Road could just calm down a bit, and in time too for the advent of the Premier League. Reid even managed to yank City to a higher finish than United one year in 1991, but after a third straight year of top half football in the top flight, he was bizarrely sacked 4 games after signing a contract extension. By the 1995-96 season, what with its horrific start and its final day confusion amid a 2-2 draw against Liverpool, City were back in the Football League. This time there would be no comeback. They had their breather of a season, yes, placing 14th after Alan Ball resigned moments into the campaign. Steve Coppell took 6 games to go, nah, I'm resigning on medical grounds, before stable winter form under Frank Clark kept City safe. There would be no second breather of a season, much like in the 80s, only this time it didn't end in promotion. The sheen had worn off Frank Clark at Main Road by the February of 1998, when he was brutally sacked after 5 winless matches. He left the club wedged between Ports, Vale and Muff, deep into the relegation zone. Enter Joe Royle, a man who knew the area, knew the club and, crucially, had experience of resurrecting a dead football club in Oldham Athletic to magical effects. Regardless of their latest win, a win which demoted Stoke to Division 2, City were joining them in relegation to the 3rd tier of English football for the first time in their life. They were hardly blowing teams away. They began their hopefully short Division 2 career bouncing between a 3-0 win at home to Blackpool to a 3-0 defeat away to Kevin Keegan's Fulham before a run of 6 draws from the next 9 league contests against teams like Wrexham, Notts County, Chesterfield and Northampton Town as well. When the draws finally relented in mid-October, they weren't exchanged for the glamour of victory but single-goal defeats, at home to Preston North End and Reading, with an indignant defeat at Lincoln City wedged in between. The Premier League felt a long way away when Colchester United showed up on Halloween '98. City were 10 points back on Stoke City's pace but only 9 ahead of the drop zone. But then something weird yet dangerous happened. Manchester City got a pinch of hope.
To the penalty area, Vikings with a header. Clayton won't best the rest of the defence. Taylor, Dickoff. That's beginning to tire as the ball comes in. Taylor gets a touch. In towards Taylor, Gota, and clear, what a chance! And this time, it's 2. He's surely the man who's going to pull the trigger, and he does!
From nowhere back into the conversation, City had gone 5 winless between November 10th and December 19th until they were jolted into life by a mortifyingly bad 2-1 defeat across at Bootham Crescent against York City. From 12th in the 3rd tier of English football to the base of the playoffs thanks to an unbeaten January which followed a near-perfect February. Now they were armed with the requisite momentum, placed perfectly to continue their surge up the table. City sprung with the advent of spring.
The 6.
It is. Eventually.
Takes it well, takes it superbly well. And they could get a second goal here. Sean Goater against the goalkeeper, through his legs.
1-1 defeat in 17. Wigan keeper Roy Carroll feared his momentum would lead to him handling. Instead,
Lincoln were being well turned over. This was sweet revenge for Man City. They'd lost 2-1 when the sides met at Sincil Bank.
48 points from 63, and they collected 3 of them when Kevin Horlock's free kick found a way through the Gillingham wall.
Sadly, the run of just one league defeat in '99 was ended with the visit of Wycombe Wanderers. It effectively torched City's late dash for automatic promotion. 5 points back on second place Walsall with just 2 games to go, City's draw at Bristol Rovers on May Day effectively quashed dreams of promotion automatically. Yet more novelty heaped onto a season of novel ferrying to hitherto unforeseen underrated totems of English football in York, Wycombe and Macclesfield. It was now time for Manchester City's first ever playoff campaign.
That's a clever error, and what a start for Wigan Athletic. Taylor on the far post, Dickoff is as well. Dickoff! Majestic! Now Brown. Forward. Goater!
After a nerve-shredding first leg, the GOAT had been fed and he had sent City to the final. Awaiting him and the club down at the National Stadium was a surprising one. Many City fans were expecting to see Preston standing opposite them at Wembley, and yet it was Tony Pulis's Gillingham who had held out for a 1-0 win at home to the Lancashire club. Gillingham, a club who had never tasted the sweet nectar of the second tier, never mind the top flight of English football, met a club who were desperate to make sure that their stay in the second division was merely transient. Gillingham, who were appearing at Wembley for the very first time in their existence, met one who were playing at the famous old ground for the 12th time. Surely there was only one winner. Except football isn't always that linear, is it?
Edge of the area, but he's worked it through. It's Carlos Salva, and it's a goal in the last 10 minutes of the contest. Carlos Salva, the goal scorer, and it's Taylor he's put through this time. Taylor, 2-0. Gillingham are surely there now, and Goater's through here. Great challenge, but the forearm shot is in, and Manchester City have given themselves some late hope here. City here looking for an opening. It's Dickoff again. Can you believe it? And it's saved by Weaver. He'll lead in the shootout. And it hit the post and stayed out. Oh, he's missed. Season, Gillingham will stay in Division 2. He has missed it. Manchester City are up.
May 1999, a month for Mancunian football comebacks. Now the blue half of the city was back in the second tier of English football. They still had a lot more ground to make up on their red neighbours. From a 2-goal deficit in stoppage time and the dreaded second season in the second division to being one step away from a much welcomed Premier League return, City were back, but they were back as underdogs. Expectations had been inflated needlessly by a pre-season victory over Liverpool at Main Road. Wolves would go and pop a little pin in that confidence on the same turf on the opening afternoon of the real season. City soon got going, however, with 5 wins from 5 as August became September, which only stuttered with an entertaining enough League Cup second round exit down at Southampton before more serious East Anglian league woes in the space of 3 days. As October reared its spooky little head, City's mettle was going to be tested as they found themselves pushed back from their inaugural position within the automatic places. 8 wins from their next 10, undefeated as well, told the rest of the division the Blues were for real. 4 clear of second place and with more daylight to Huddersfield Town in the playoff places, promotion was beginning to feel like a matter of time before the wings were clipped by those same Terriers, and Wolves and Stockport piled in a run of 3 successive defeats. And yet City got out of that mess largely unscathed, even if they had been exposed somewhat. They still occupy the automatics, and a successful Christmas only bolstered City hopes that they might just be Premier League bound. Swindon, West Brom, Grimsby and Fulham all beaten as City's fleeting FA Cup dreams were dashed by an incredibly strong Leeds team in the 4th round. Tiptoeing out of January, City soon found late wintry stumbling blocks, first in defeat at Bramall Lane. The reprieve of victory at Nottingham Forest and at home to Norwich proved merely temporary thanks to a trio of 1-1 draws and 2 pair of poor results, first on the wrong end of the scoreline against QPR and Barnsley, before yet more draws against the runaway league leaders Charlton as well as Stockport. Suddenly we were straying into typical City territory as they lapsed back into 4th, and yet they still clutched onto a crucial game in hand which, if they won, they'd be back into 2nd place ahead of both Ipswich Town and Barnsley. What a great time then to move into some form.
Ball onto the taker, Johnson was in there, and Taylor!
A March 25th win over West Brom kept them up to speed with the pace of Ipswich Town in 2nd and ahead of fellow promotion rivals Barnsley. Only after a couple of 2-goal triumphs over Swindon Town and Bolton Wanderers did City finally fulfil their game in hand to jump back into the automatics. A Paul Dickoff brace and a 4-0 thrashing of Crewe Alexandra extended City's rule over 2nd place, only for that to be partially stripped back by an irritating little 1-1 draw with Grimsby Town. And yet, April 22nd, as the games were whistling away fast and furiously, with its 2-0 victory over Tranmere Rovers, left a potential promotion day 2 days later on the south coast against Portsmouth. Unfortunately, they were held to a draw as Ipswich kept themselves in the hunt, 2 points back. Later that week, City fans poured onto the pitch, having dispatched Birmingham City 1-0 in their penultimate game. They had gaped the chasm up to 5 points clear of Ipswich, except they had yet to play. They would make the journey to Charlton Athletic the following day. Suddenly the season sharpened into focus. If Ipswich didn't win in the capital, City were Premier League again. If Ipswich did get those 3 points away to champions Charlton, City would have to go away to a strong Blackburn side and get something. As they did that, Ipswich would face the relegation-threatened Walsall. Fate was in City's hands, but it was by no means going to be straightforward.
Ipswich are finishing strongly. Jim Magilton's free kick gave them a 1-0 lead at half-time. Magilton picked out David Johnson with about half an hour to play. And they soon killed off the game. Magilton, provider again. And Martin Royce with their third made sure it goes down to the final weekend.
Just sitting there, it's a good flick from Ashley Ward, but what about the finish? This really well. You can't let the ball bounce like that. There's no talking, and the ball's momentum takes it into the net. Kelly stranded, no talking, or in this din of celebrating. But Blackburn now beginning to fold. Dickoff again's causing problems in there, but when it falls to the left foot, what he deserves. Fantastic endeavour. The quality finish with the right foot.
Finally, City were back in the big time, in time for a new millennium, in time for the great growth of English football and the Premier League as the greatest sporting brand in the whole world. It had been 4 long years since Manchester City had occupied the Premier League. A lot had changed. Their neighbours had been noisy celebrating becoming the best team in world football, and the Premier League had quickly become one of the most sought after brands in the sport. Immediately it was obvious that Manchester City had to invest massively in the squad. Through the door for cash came Leeds' Alf-Inge Haaland, a signing which would have big ramifications a generation later, whilst both Steve Howe and then West Ham's Paulo Wanchope followed him. Easily the most interest was drawn from George Weah's free transfer from Milan, but he wouldn't last long at the club, continuing his checkered Premier League career from his Chelsea days, his 1995 Ballon d'Or a speck in the rear-view mirror of his life. The early stage of the 2000-2001 season meant a nice little old reunion in the League Cup with an old flame, Gillingham, over 2 legs. And whilst George Weah was able to score precisely half of his 4 City goals in normal time, the second leg was renowned for yet another Paul Dickoff late winner against the Gills, with City triumphant again, 4-2 after extra time, 5-3 on aggregate. After squeezing through that tie, November was bookended in the competition with a slender win at Aston Villa and at home to the recently relegated Wimbledon. It left City with a perfect chance to return to a cup final as they were paired off with a fellow recently promoted Ipswich Town, a team that City had finished above the prior season. With lower league Birmingham City awaiting in a potential two-legged semi-final, the winner was surely Millennium Stadium bound. Once again, City plumbed the depths of extra time in the competition thanks to Matt Holland equalising Sean Goater's early opener. The sickening winner, however, came courtesy of Mark Venus. Ipswich were through, they'd botched their semi-final against eventual finalist Birmingham, but they'd have a much better Premier League time of it than City had done. Annoying too, since City had Birmingham's number in the FA Cup third round 3 weeks later in the first days of 2001. And whilst Coventry were dispatched from the next round of the Cup, City would ultimately bow out of the competition away at Anfield to the eventual champions of both domestic cups, Liverpool. Their first Premier League engagement for 4 years was a relatively kind one from the fixture computer handed another promoter club in Charlton away from home. Perfect until the football had to start. A dream game on paper when the fixtures were published, a nightmare game on the grass when the season had to be played. City soon slunk into an inconsistent groove where they were clearly good enough to spring a surprise on Leeds United's best ever Premier League team at the beginning of September, and they clearly had a good enough base level when they recorded a pair of October triumphs against Bradford and Southampton. But they could just as easily chuck in a poor home display, as the August defeat at Main Road against Coventry City showed. But with 4 wins from 10 in their back pocket, City were housed within the top half of the table as October crept to a close. The more the season went on, however, the more City were ground down into a reality of a relegation battle.
They had ground to make up in the Premiership. They've got this season. And here goes Henry for number 5.
4 for West Ham. Oh, Bolshy, blasé and brilliant from Di Canio.
Already in the Premiership this season. And he's got another one.
They were now in the thick of it, with seasoned Premier League teams beneath them in Derby, Coventry and Middlesbrough. Backs against the wall, City spectacularly hit back with a 5-0 thrashing of Everton. Maybe it was the big clubs of October, November and December turning up that had City spiralling down the table after all. Then again, City's form wouldn't turn that corner when the fixture list grew kinder into 2001.
The Scottish international picked himself up and just got on with it.
Jensen chasing after that one. Oh, what a goal! An unbelievable strike!
In the dying seconds, Keane struck again to produce a scoreline that flattered Leeds.
10 whole league matches came and went without a single victory. Derby even came back around a second time as the pair shared 2 draws that did nothing for either relegation-strewn team. Surprisingly, City were quite gritty on the road, only losing up at the Stadium of Light to the still surprise package of Sunderland, whilst also carving out draws at Villa Park, Highfield Road and the Riverside Stadium. Unfortunately, their form back at home never lived up to the hype. Whilst Leeds' 4-0 triumph in Manchester and Liverpool's point there were understandable, less so was a slender defeat against a poor Spurs team and especially Charlton sticking another 4 goals beyond them. Now, City were in trouble. Besides Bradford City, who were quite clearly doomed to demotion, a 4-point gap was a comparative chasm to Middlesbrough, with only they and Derby realistically catchable with only 11 matches to play. They needed a hero to turn the tide, they needed a GOAT. Indeed, it was Sean Goater who got the second half winner at St James Park, securing a much needed 3 points and a first win on the road since they won at the Dell. And speaking of Southampton, they were next to Main Road, with incredibly winnable fixtures against Bradford, Villa and Everton to come. The build-up to Easter was incredibly crucial. After a gut-wrenching Dan Petrescu winner for Southampton, City desperately needed all 3 points from West Yorkshire. Like a gambler trying desperately to claw back into profit, City continued to lose at the Premier League roulette wheel, conceding 10 in 3 matches. Now 5 games remained and City needed to make up 5 points to save their top-flight skin. What a time then to start to win. All that work to still be 4 points behind Derby and Borough, with only West Ham reachable beyond them. City's win over the Hammers unbelievably had the Blues in their first home win in the league in 2001. City were now constantly living the cliched cup finals. One loss would mean game over, a win even could mean game over. Typically, it would be Ipswich Town waiting for them next. Of course it was them to deliver the final cruel blow. Whilst Manchester City would be forced to prepare for the Football League once more, Ipswich Town had a chance to qualify for the fucking Champions League going into the final day. It hadn't taken long, but Manchester City were back where they started. Where they really started, however, was in the glory years of Joe Mercer and Malcolm Allison, which you can learn about here.